Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C., and today we're at the Capital Area Food Bank in Ward 5, and I want to welcome you. We're here to provide some updates on the federal government shutdown and what it means for us in Washington, D.C. We are joined by our Congresswoman, who you will hear from shortly, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. I am also joined by members of my cabinet who will help me with some of your questions, including Laura ZEILINGER, who is the Director of the Department of Human Services, Dr. Unique Morris-Hughes, who is the Director of the District's Department of Employment Services, and Jennifer Reed, who is the Director of the Mayor's Office of Budget and Performance. So, as I mentioned, we're at the Capital Area Food Bank, and you can see from the warehouse where we stand and all of the volunteers who help the Capital Area Food Bank day in and day out, that this is their business every day of the year to help people in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area who are food insecure and who tap into various partners throughout the year to help with nutritious meals. And the Capital Area Food Bank has stepped up to the plate when the federal government has not paid its workers. And they are making available food throughout the region for furloughed federal government employees. Here in our region, federal employees and contractors who are affected. It also, the cafe workers, we know, who in restaurants across D.C. have had their hours cut and are not getting paid. The babysitters who unexpectedly had no children to watch because their parents are at home and not getting a paycheck and unable to pay them. The barbers and beauticians who are losing money every single day because people aren't coming to work and are trying to save. The housekeepers who people cannot afford to pay. These are all people who are not directly employed by the federal government but affected by this shutdown. Our metro. We know that we are losing the fair revenue from federal government workers who ride the metro every day, though we must keep the metro open so that we can serve our residents, our city, our visitors. We have to have our metro operating, and metro is losing $400,000 a day. Later today, the Chief Financial Officer for the district will announce our updated revenue projections, and I anticipate that it will show us that we are already, it will show that the shutdown, I call it the lockout is hurting our economy overall. On Friday, many of us saw photo lines of people wrapped around for blocks of government workers who were there for a free meal. And we thank Chef Jose Andres for offering those free meals. We've seen Chef Andres in disaster areas. We didn't expect him to have to offer free meals to federal workers for a man-made disaster. But that is where we are. And these are unprecedented times. I am proud of our city and our community. The neighbors have stepped up. Our nonprofit community has stepped up to help us. And that we have built a government that is resilient and a government that can deal with tough times. But we will have we will have a point at which those tough times will affect all of the other services that we provide in our city. So I want to thank organizations like the Capital Area Food Bank who have stepped up to the plate. These acts of kindness and generosity reflect our DC values. Last week, I joined governors from several other states in calling on the Trump administration to make more federal workers eligible for unemployment insurance benefits. Currently, federal workers who are deemed essential must remain on their job on a full-time basis without pay and without the ability to claim unemployment. These are our TSA agents, active duty members of our military included. So let me be clear. They are deemed essential, they are required to go to work, and they do not get paid, and they are not eligible for unemployment insurance. They are required to go to work, they do not get paid, they are ineligible for unemployment insurance, and they provide some of the most vital services to us as residents of this great country. Unfortunately, the Department of Labor denied our request, and so today I will be sending emergency legislation to the council that will allow us to provide residents, essential personnel deemed ineligible for unemployment insurance, to get that much needed financial support. And I'm looking forward to working with the council to get that emergency bill passed just as soon as possible. We're doing this because we know that our residents cannot wait for the shutdown to end to pay their rent. People who are facing eviction, and they're choosing to take medication over buying groceries. In addition to this legislation today, I'm also announcing that I have allocated $2 million in local contingency funds to the Department of Human Services to supply Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, or SNAP benefits, for new customers, lapsed customers, and customers who need to recertify their eligibility during the federal shutdown. This $2 million in local funds will allow DHS to provide SNAP benefits to those families because we're not certain when the federal funds will continue to flow for them. But the only way to end this unnecessary burden on families is to get the government back open. So we will continue to work with our federal partners. We will continue to rely on the leadership and guidance of our Congresswoman. But I join all of my fellow Americans in calling on the Congress and the President to get the government back open. We have done everything in our city to be responsible fiscally and make sure that we have a government that runs well. And what we know now is that we will have to plan for tens of millions of dollars of losses because of this unnecessary shutdown. So with that, I want to turn to our Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, and then we will be joined by the President and CEO of the Capital Area Food Bank, RADHA MUTHIAH. Where's RADHA? Okay, Congresswoman.
First, I want to thank the mayor for stepping up to call attention to what the city is doing to make up for what the federal government is required to do. And I do want to say this. I must say, I understand how important it is now. Each year, in anticipation of a shutdown, I get language in the prior year's bill that says if the federal government shuts down, the district will remain open. That's the only reason the district is not going through these pains today, because we have had these shutdowns to affect us. We've got 62,000 federal workers here in the District of Columbia. Got more than 250,000 in the region, and I do want to explain why this has become such a priority for me. I'm sure it is for many of my colleagues in the Congress, because this has become a crisis for the country. But I have to inform you that for the District of Columbia, this is an emergency. And the reason is not only the 62,000 federal employees who live in the District of Columbia, but this is the hub where so many federal employees work. Mayor has spoken about their disposable income. By the way, that's also amounts to taxes for the District of Columbia. So when that huge number of workers who come in every day to work in federal buildings downtown are not here, everything is affected, from our retail, from the amenities that we take for granted, to taxes to the District of Columbia, because those amenities which serve federal workers pay taxes to the District of Columbia. And this is going on for more than a month. I am so concerned that I'm spending all week, beginning here, trying to talk to my residents, even to get from them what I can learn about what's being done and any suggestions they may have, because this doesn't show any sign of abating. I'm going to go I'm very pleased, I must tell you, for what the Capital Area Feed Bank is doing, because I don't know how you're able to do it. It's all you can do in the winter, I thought, just to feed the hungry. Now we're asking you to feed middle-class workers, people who should be able to feed themselves. So we need to do all we can for the Capital Area Food Bank. I'm going to go tomorrow to where, again, another emergency emergency provider has come to the district, and that's Jose Andres. I'm going to be going to Pennsylvania Avenue to thank him for feeding our federal workers. I mean, he goes to places like Puerto Rico and Honduras, and now he's come to the capital of the United States. And then I'm going to be having my own emergency town hall, because I need to hear from my residents on Thursday at 6 p.m. at Judiciary Square. Look, this is serious, folks. Fitch Ratings has already warned the United States that they are flirting with the downgrading of the U.S. AAA credit rating. We're losing nationally in the economy $1 billion a week. I think the administration should say bye-bye to its goal of a 3% increase in growth for this year. I don't see how that's going to happen now with these losses. Congress passed a law last week indicating that people who are having to come to the Capital Area Food Bank are going to get their money at some point. But let me tell you, that was a law we didn't need to pass, because the 13th Amendment and the 5th Amendment says you can't make people work for nothing. We've got to do something about making people work for nothing for any period of time, and that's what we're doing now, because some of this will never be able to be made up. People are working without compensation. They are having to pay more because they're missing payments of their own. I am most concerned about furloughed contract workers, because they will not get their money back, and I've got a bill in to try to get money back for them, particularly with no end in sight. In wards 7 and 8, half of the federal employees there make less than $75,000 a week. The 250,000 people in our region economy, we got the entire region impacted more than any part of the country, are feeling the effects with that economy, our economy, losing $100 million a day. Metro, which is already on its knees, will have to almost start all over again. I'm particularly worried now about the disposable income that's not being spent in the District of Columbia, and how it affects our economy and how it affects tax revenue to the District of Columbia, on which it has been depending. Now, I have co-sponsors bills. I'm afraid that they're not going to do it for us now, and I don't know if these bills will ever be passed. A bill for zero-interest loans from the U.S. Treasury for the federal workers, all 800,000 of them. A bill for federal workers and their families, that federal bill that says you can't foreclose or evict people during this shutdown, and another bill that allows federal employees and contractors to withdraw funds from their retirement accounts. Now, this is the kind of emergency that is self-inflicted. We call it the Trump shutdown, I'm afraid we're going to have to call it a Trump emergency now. If anybody can think of anything further I can do, please meet me before I leave here. I can't stand this any longer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman. And RADHA, if you would join us.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you very much, Congresswoman. It's a pleasure to have all of you here today at the Capital Area Food Bank. As you all have heard, and we all know far too well by now, there are too many families in our region that are struggling. There are those who typically depend on supplementary nutrition, and there are now those who have been mentioned already, have been furloughed, employees and contractors who are suffering through a difficult period during this particular month. There's so many households in our area who live paycheck to paycheck, and we've seen with the absence of one paycheck how thin that safety net is for them and how dependent they are and how they have traveled that slippery slope from a state of independence to one of dependence in our community. The Capital Area Food Bank is proud to be part of a network of 450 different partners throughout our region. Some large ones like Martha's Table, Bread for the City, some DC Central Kitchen, and other much smaller faith-based organizations that have a one-room pantry within their organizations. We've heard from all of them, as well as through our Hunger Lifeline, the increased need that our region is facing over the past few weeks. What's interesting, though, is, we've had a couple of these pop-up markets over the weekend specifically designated to be able to support federal workers and contractors. It's just really interesting to hear the stories of people in line, those who've supported and who've donated to the food bank to help our neighbors in need. They just cannot believe that they're the ones standing in line to receive that handout at this particular point in time. But amidst all of these challenges in our community, it's also really refreshing and wonderful to know that the community does come together to support those in need. We've had an outpouring of interest in volunteers to be able to come bag the produce in order to have those at special distribution sites. We've also had the benefit of our grocery partners and food partners in particular, Giant, Safeway, and Nestle, really step up to say what can they do to help meet this increased need that is occurring in our area. And in fact, we anticipate that it's about a 20% increase in need. To put that in perspective, in the typical month of January, the food bank would serve the equivalent of 3 million meals. But by the end of this month, we're expecting that number to go to 3.6 million meals. So about a 20% increase in need. And all of this support from our community, whether it's corporate members or individuals or foundations, really does make a difference, and we're thankful that we live in a community that believes in giving to one another. It's especially necessary now with the shutdown, given that it's impacting more people than typical. And our neighbors who rely on SNAP, Beverly is here, has done a lot of advocacy on behalf of SNAP recipients in this region. There are tremendous hardships that many of them are facing. Many of you know the SNAP benefits were distributed in D.C. on January 17th, but they're supposed to last, up to 50-plus days for some people, when they typically would only address about 2.5 to 3 weeks' worth of food needs. So we know that beyond the furloughed government workers and contractors, there's an impending need that's coming down the road, just 2 or 3 weeks down the road, of SNAP beneficiaries needing even more support than they typically would, just because of the timing of the release of payment for SNAP. So we're especially thrilled to be here and to be a part and to hear of the mayor's announcement today, because it will make a significant difference to those who just didn't make it in time to be able to qualify for SNAP and now have the ability to do so with DC government's support. So we applaud the mayor and her team for making this a priority and ensuring that SNAP families don't hurt as much as they potentially could in the month of February. So thank you to all of those who are taking action. Please don't stop. We hope you can stop when the shutdown comes to an end, and we hope that that's soon. But for right now, we urge you to continue to support, whether it's through donations or volunteering, to support our neighbors who very much are in need. Thank you.
Thank you, RADHA. Thank you. Well said. Thank you. Okay, we're happy to answer a few questions. Yes.
Mayor Bowser, with the unemployment benefits bill, what's the idea of that? Is the idea that you're using local DC dollars to pay out those unemployment benefits?
It will be paid out like other unemployment benefits. I'll have Dr. Morris Hughes talk specifically.
Yep, thank you. That's right. So we currently have a fund that we administer unemployment insurance benefits through. Our plan is to utilize that fund to provide the much needed resources and benefits for these essential furloughed staff. Right now, we don't have an exact amount, but what we do know is that there are about 60,000 furloughed workers, so we know that there's the potential of several thousand. So we will have that data available later this week.
Mayor,
Yes,
I don't understand this. So the federal government denied the city's request to provide unemployment payments, and the city's going to provide them anyway?
Yes.
And that's going to cost, that's for any of the 60,000 people. I just want to get it straight.
Yes, so let me help you understand that. Currently, the district, like several other states, has petitioned the U.S. Department of Labor to allow us provide benefits to essential staff. This is TSA workers, special police. These are folks who are federal government employees that are required to show up to work, but they are not getting paid. We have had people file and request unemployment benefits, but because they are required to show up to work but not get paid, have been denied. So this will allow us to provide the much needed benefits and resources to the people that are working day in and day out to facilitate the business of this government.
But it does not apply to those who have been furloughed who are not coming in.
They're already eligible.
That's correct.
Mayor,
So we're
sorry.
talking, one second, we're talking about two groups. The essential staff have, to this point, been unable to seek unemployment benefits because they are working. They have to work. They're not getting paid, but they're showing up and they're working. And so that is the group of people that we will address with the new legislation. The others are already eligible to come to the Department of Employment Services and apply for unemployment insurance. Yes, one second. Yes.
On the same line, since D.C. is not a state, could your emergency legislation get thrown a roadblock by the federal government?
We don't expect that.
No?
No.
So under normal circumstances, will these always be local dollars that go to pay these benefits out, or the federal?
They're going to hit the unemployment trust fund. So the monies that we collect from people paying unemployment insurance, we have a fund, and that's how we pay unemployment insurance claims.
On SNAP benefits, up until about 20 minutes ago, it looked like the SNAP money had run out, or could run out for February.
Yes, Laura will speak specifically, but we just learned before I walked in that we've gotten some advisory from the feds that they could draw down all existing dollars so it would go beyond the 31st. We want to continue to have our contingency in place to address people who will be newly seeking SNAP benefits who wouldn't be covered.
We are in constant communication with FNS as they give information out to states and they around the early issuance, for example, of February benefits. They with that, they advised us that we would not be able to draw down funds after January 31st. Today, they said that we could continue to draw down funds into the month of February until those funds are depleted. We don't know how long that will be, which is why it's still important for us to have contingency.
Any other questions?
Your response to the council overriding your veto about the fair determination being amendment act?
I don't have much more to add to that. I'm just really clear about how we should go about having the safe use of our metro. The council always has the ability to come up with specialized or customized fare subsidies, like I have done. I am proud to say that nobody has done more for free metro than I have. A few years back, I created a program called Kids Ride Free, which allows all of our school kids to ride free on the metro. I have expanded that program. It started with the bus only, It has expanded to Metro. I'm also proud that we've expanded that program to cover our summer youth, more than 6,000 kids who get summer jobs more than 10,000 kids that get summer jobs each and every year. So it is possible that as a city we can decide to support free Metro for whomever we want, to customize a program that works. But I am concerned about making sure that everybody follows the rules of the road, or the rules of the Metro Rail, as it were. Yes.
Mayor Bowser, do you support the bill that passed the council today that would provide eviction protections?
I'll have to look at it a little bit more. Absolutely, but we are, and I have asked, and I will say that we've asked our Department of Housing Finance to look at ways to tell mortgage holders, for example, how to communicate with their mortgage companies and give them advice on reaching out. And I would give the same advice to people in their in how to pay their landlords.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.